Good afternoon, everyone. Legend here, and today I'm going to talk about Halloween Horror Nights 2021 at Universal Orlando. I've gotten to go to the event about 5 times so far this year. I've kind of gotten all my opinions lined up, and I love Halloween Horror Nights. It's my favorite theme park event that they do. I think it's incredible that they make all these haunted houses all new every year, and it's just such a spectacle, such a wonderful event. I look forward to it. Now let's talk about the 2021 version. I feel like it makes the most sense to talk about the haunted houses, which are the star of the show at the event. I'm going to go through and give kind of my thoughts on all the different haunted houses, beginning in Scarey, Ohio, which is located in the tent next to Men in Black, next to Fear Factor. And it's a good house. It's not a great house. This house, it calls back to all the different Horror Nights houses of the past 10, 15 years. They took place in this town called Cary, Ohio, which has all these goofy things that have happened in Horror Nights lore. And I mean, in this haunted house, there were different callbacks and scenes from everything. Spawning, Hive, Meets, HR Blood and Guts, Slaughter Cinema, Orphanage, I think it was Dead End as well. So that was kind of cool. But this house, it felt a little bit flat for me. It was kind of good, not great. There were no wow moments either. And as a guy that really, really liked HR Blood and Guts, that's a top 10 Horror Nights house ever for me. I was hoping for more HR Blood and Guts, but there's only a little snippet in there. Would love to see them do an HR Blood and Guts sequel house at some point in time. The next haunted house was a big surprise for me, and that is one of the main IPs. That is The Haunting of Hill House. This is located in the new parade building, and it's awesome. I'm somebody that did not like the show. I saw an episode and a half, and I was kind of bored and confused. It was definitely not for me. Molly loved it. It was just not my thing. This house is really good. It's got a great facade. Once you go in the building, there's this amazing facade of the Hill House. And the thing I loved about this haunted house, they had top-notch special effects with moving props hidden behind scrims, Pepper's ghost, a doorknob that moves itself. Definitely, I feel like this haunted house had more technology and more magic trick kind of stuff than really anywhere else in the event. Also, they had some really innovative and creative scare spots they haven't used at the event before. Also, there was a really, really kind of unsettling where there's a scare actor who's a pregnant lady, and the tummy with the baby inside, you could see it moving. And it's so weird. It's such a cool special effect. You're like, oh my goodness, kind of moment. Molly does watch the show, and she says all the audio clips that are used for these scare cues do come from the show itself. The next haunted house is Wicked Growth, and this is in one of the sprung tents over by Men in Black. And this is great. This house is really, really great. It's just classic Halloween, but it's done really, really, really well. There's a great outdoor entry, as you can see here, with all these pumpkins, and you walk through like this tunnel of pumpkins. It's great. A lot of cool, simple effects, and it's classic Halloween. There's skeletons, pumpkin men, witches, goblins, a haunted farm, a witch's house, and a pumpkin lair. It's nothing when you think about it. It's like, oh man, that's going to be really out of the ordinary, but it's done so well, and it's just really fun. Also in the tents is Puppet Theater Captive Audience, which is a really cool house. The theme of this one is something like there was a puppet troupe and an earthquake, and then they went insane or something like that. It is very detailed. It is also very gory. It's one of those houses when you walk by and there's lots of scenes where you're like, oh, this is pretty messed up. A lot of like people using dead people as puppets. There's really some cool stuff in here. Like there's a giant theater room, which is just this wonderfully amazing set. There are some cool puppets in there. I did not know a lot about this house going in, and I was expecting it to be like Scary Muppets, and it was definitely not that. But I did enjoy Puppets Theater. Moving on to another kind of tribute house to the history of the event is Icons Captured. And this is all about the different icons of Horror Nights past, and they all are thrown together in one house. I loved it. This is so cool. I also like haunted houses like this, kind of give you a little bit of a couple rooms of this and then a couple rooms of that, instead of 4 minutes of Dracula or things like that. I really like the kind of the amalgamation houses like this. And it's got all of the icons in there. I really like the sections for the Usher, Jack and Chance, and Bloody Mary, who legally can't be used at the event anymore due to a loophole kind of thing in contracts, but they had a room that pays tribute to her. It's actually really cool. Also, just some of the details are really neat as well. Like, if the icon is doing a murder of somebody, like a mannequin, the victim is wearing the HHN shirt from the year that they were the icon. I thought that was a really neat thing. I will say, with this haunted house, based on the safety protocols, a lot of the actors are wearing face masks, and that did hurt it hurt it a little bit. The next haunted house is Legendary Truth Case Files, and this one ties into HHN lore, but This must tie into deep HHN lore because I am not as familiar with this. Both the whole legendary truth storyline, or a lot of the scenes are throwbacks to other things. I think in the earlier days of HHN, so it ties into the lore. But man, it went over my head, and I've been going since 19. They do have some cool projection effects in there. There's a neat giant puppet. It felt like a longer haunted house, and there's a really cool scene where you're going like out into New York Street and then into the Kitty Cat Club, and there's a singer on there. And I always think it's neat when they have like the live mic'd up performer in the haunted house. So that one, kind of okay. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, based off some of the classic horror films. This one's exactly what you think it is going to be. It's also in a soundstage. There's lots of smells. There's lots of chainsaws. It felt long, and one of my buddies works in there, so I like to go in this haunted house and try to yell something stupid at him as he's, murdering people for 8 hours a day. Next up is Tooth Fairy, which is one of the houses that was out there last year along with the Brides of Frankenstein. And I like this one a lot. It's got a great innovative facade where it's like you're walking through a pop-up book and there's lots of moving things. And then I love this haunted house because all throughout it there's like a Dr. Seussian style narrator over the speakers narrating all the scenes, and it's really cool. It's very innovative. Like sometimes Horror Nights kind of feels like the same thing over and over again, and I really did not get that with Tooth Fairy. I think this is definitely the most innovative house at the event this year. And it's messed up. You walk through, there's plenty of things where like, oh man, this is really messed up. The vinyl sheeting in different parts does hurt, as that's part of their COVID-19 prevention measures. But I like Tooth Fairy a lot. The biggest IP house this year is Beetlejuice, and that is located in the Parade Building. And this is the most popular haunted house at the event this year by far. And for me, it's just kind of okay. It definitely felt more of a walkthrough attraction than a haunted house, which is not uncommon. We saw things like Ghostbusters in the years past. Again, another one where it was more scenic and atmospheric than scary. I do feel like they did a much better job with Ghostbusters. As you walk in, there is a mic'd up Beetlejuice just interacting with the crowd, and that's pretty cool. It does feature the return of the spinning tunnel for the first couple. That has been missing for Horror Nights a little bit. They do have some great sets, some characters. There's a great giant puppet, but overall, it is just kind of disappointing. I really think this one should have been given a bigger budget and been put in a soundstage. The final haunted house is the Bride of Frankenstein Lives, another returner from last year's Horror Nights 29.5 or Horror Nights Light, whatever you wanted to call it. And this one has a great facade. It feels very old school as well. And it's all about the Bride of Frankenstein versus the Bride of Dracula. And it's a pretty solid haunted house. Moving on, let's talk a little bit about the scare zones. Right as you enter the park, you'll be greeted with 30 years and 30 fears, kind of the welcome zone. And I actually think it's done pretty well. Lots of stages with characters on different levels. There's fire, there's stilt walkers, and I think it works really well as a kind of like a welcome to the event kind of thing. It's solid. I give it a thumbs up. My favorite scare zone this year is Lights, Camera, Action, Eddie's Revenge, which is kind of like a tribute to scare zones of years past. And they've got all sorts of stuff in there, from Vamp 55 to Treeks and Foons, which if you're not familiar with it, this was a really weird scare zone that had like these big pudgy clown characters with multiple faces on it that were set back in Toon Lagoon, back when they had Horror Nights at Islands of Adventure. And the whole thing was like a giant foam party, so you would be walking through foam with these giant weird looking clouds. It was really bizarre. No foam this year, but they did bring back the Treeks and Foons. Seek and Destroy is located in the New York area, and I don't know, this one just feels kind of weird. I guess you're in like a space prison. It feels weird. It feels kind of like the First Order in Star Wars. This one, it's not great. I know the New York scare zone's hard to do, but this is definitely kind of a miss there. Crypt TV is a YouTube channel, and that does horror stuff. I've never seen it. I've never heard of it, but the scare zone located by the Fast and the Furious shop is actually pretty good. Lots of stuff going on in there, lots of weird stuff. And I haven't seen the show, but I enjoyed the zone. Like lots of weird kind of stuff going on in there. And last but not least, in Central Park is Gorewood Forest, featuring the return of Terror Queen. And this was pretty solid as well. I love that they brought back the Terror Queen, whose storyline was that she would come back every 15 years. And here we go. She was at 15, and now she's at 30. Make a return at 45. And they got some kind of cool glowing effects on the trees as well. There are two different shows at Halloween Horror Nights this year. You got Halloween Nightmare Fuel, which is in the Fear Factor Live Arena, and this is cool. It meshes up sexy dancing with fire and magic. A pretty solid, very high energy show. The highlight for me is definitely the fire dancers. They do some really innovative stuff, twirling fire around. It is really, really neat. The other show is the Fountain Show, the Marathon of Mayhem Carnage Factory, and it's good. Definitely not as good as the Marathon of Mayhem show a couple of years ago. This is one I really feel like if they would have gotten that Beetlejuice IP to be used, that could have been really good because that would have done well with the fountains and stuff like that. But instead, you've got like Bride of Frankenstein and Hill House, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, things that don't work great for a fountain show environment. You do have a lot of scenes there with Jack the Clown and some of the other icons, and that works pretty well. But the show, it's just okay. Now, Horror Nights, it did improve some stuff this year. The merchandise, I think, is a lot better this year. Also, the food is a lot better. They have lots of good food around the park and unique food. Like, I got the candied pork belly, which was awesome. Alrighty, before wrapping up my thoughts on the event, do you want to share my rankings of how I rank the houses? I will say there's probably no bad houses this year. I think everything's good. And I wouldn't say anything is, like, going to make my top 5 houses of all time. But I think everything's really good quality. So for me, how I would rank the houses, number 10, Legendary Truth, number 9, Scarey, Ohio, number 8, Beetlejuice, number 7, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, number 6, Bride of Frankenstein, number 5, Tooth Fairy, number 4, Puppet Theater, number 3, Wicked Growth, number 2, Haunting of Hill House, and number 1, Icons Captured. And there we go. That's Halloween Horror Nights 2021 or Halloween Horror Nights 30 at Universal Orlando. If I want to hear your thoughts on the event. Like, share your top 10 rankings below in the comments section, and your thoughts on the event as well. If you have any questions, if you're heading out to the park, let me know. I'll be doing my best to answer them. And thank you for watching this video.